Let's join Heather and our board certified behavior analyst Marla Watts Pacheco as they talk about this week's high leverage practice.
Welcome to Little Bits of TLC, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of education. Join our host, Heather Volchko, as this season we focus on high leverage practices, HLPs. Each episode will examine a different HLP, essential strategies designed to enhance teaching and improve outcomes across various educational settings. These practices focus on collaboration, assessment, social, emotional, behavioral support, and instruction, benefiting all K-12 students. I hope you're ready to be both challenged and inspired, because this season is all about mastering the HLPs. This is Little Bits of TLC. Looking to become an RBT in a school setting? Or just want training that actually fits the work you do every day? Our school-based RBT 40-hour training was built just for that. This course meets the 2026 training requirements and was created by real school-based specialists who know what the job actually looks like. It's engaging, up-to-date, and grounded in the classroom, not a clinic. With cross-training connections for paraeducators and study tools to help you pass your exam with confidence, this training goes way beyond checking a box. Led by Heather Volchko, Candace McCoy, and Manny Wacius, and featuring Dr. Richard Van Acker, it's the first course of its kind that we know of, and we're proud of that. Head to university.thresholdlearning.org to enroll and get started. Let us teach you the basics, get you thriving, and move you onward through your journey to becoming an RBT today.
Teachers match the intensity of instruction to the intensity of the students' learning and behavioral challenges. Intensive instruction involves working with students with similar needs on a small number of high-priority, clearly defined skills or concepts critical to academic success. Teachers group students based on common learning needs, clearly defined learning goals, and use systematic, explicit, and well-paced instruction. They frequently monitor students' progress and adjust their instruction accordingly. Within intensive instruction, students have many opportunities to respond and receive immediate corrective feedback with teachers and peers to practice what they are learning.
This week, we're talking about high leverage practice number 20, provide intensive instruction for academics and behavior. And Marla, I'm super excited to have you back for this conversation because this is literally what you do all day, every day with students who have not been able to be successful in lesser intensive settings. And so they get to come hang out in your program, and that's where your team provides these things. So for you, what does this practice look like?
Yes, no, I'm happy to be back here again. We are a unique setting where basically the students who are not getting those supports in their locals come to us, right? And that process it's a big process in itself, right? Of who makes that decision. But ultimately, our setting, we provide that intense instruction where we're providing those intense supports that those students may not be getting in their local. And it looks different for every student, really depending on like their disability or like what skills they need or what their current skill sets are. So it looks different for everyone. But for us, I think we're a multidisciplinary building, right? So we have not just like I myself as a behavior consultant, but we have teacher consultants, we have occupational therapists, we have physical therapists, we have speech therapists, also visually blind consultants as well. So it's a very big, diverse group. And I think just depending on the students' needs and where they're at, that's where we meet as a team and discuss like how we're going to do this. If that means, are we going to provide more intense reinforcement? Are we going to provide certain visuals? Are we going to have a certain desk that's going to be shaped for them so that way they have access to their peers? Their curriculum as well. How are we modifying curriculum so that way they can learn at their level? So it's a big mix, Heather, and it's not just like a one recipe that we have for every student. It looks different for everyone. But yeah, I think it's really fun. It's really a team effort, and we really just want to ensure that whatever, recipe essentially that we're going to give, right, that we're going to come up with, it's going to best fit the student in that moment, whoever we're serving.
Yeah, I love this analogy of a recipe, right? Because there's so many different ingredients that come and go and they all have their like different role to play. So for you and your team, how are you figuring out like what is even going to need to be considered? I mean, I'm wondering if like the sending team is saying these are our gaps and this is what we haven't been able to make progress in, but then like how does your team to figure out so then here's what we can do. Here's how we can, layer in more than their local can.
And this is even something myself that I'm still learning, but I feel like I feel more confident and have a better understanding of how that looks like now. I think before I had any school experience, I was like, what the what? Because for those who are listening that, have that in-home experience or have that clinic experience, the closest that I can match to that question that Heather's just asking, like, how does it look like from locals transferring a student to your setting? How does that work? For us, like we can go into a home or a clinic, right? We assess the client and we're just kind of like seeing, okay, what skills are they needing in this time? What barriers are in their way? What skill sets do they have? And then how do we work around that, right? And it's really you as a BCBA trying to figure that out with a parent, right? If you can also involve your client part of that process, even better. And for schools, it's a whole different ballgame. And Heather, I know you having more of that education background, but I think all of it really starts with like that IEP, right? When you're going to meet the student, you're going to meet with their teachers, you're going to meet, essentially like the IEP, specifically like what we call our academic achievement level. We really look at that. We really think that's like the meat and the potatoes of it all. Of like, okay, this is what they're thriving, this is what they're doing, this is what they're exhibiting. And these are some of the issues that we're having right now. Perhaps they were not able to meet this goal. So we look at that, and then as well as taking like what parents are saying, what teachers are saying, you kind of gather all of that and determine, okay, what goals do we need to continue to work on? What goals are we going to modify? And I think because they are coming to a different setting like us, our team's going to propose something else too. And sometimes just the change in itself could be a good thing. I mean, it's a very complex discussion, I think. Like, I wish I can say it's like an easy, like, okay, we just do this. But I really do think we should, as best practice ethically, that we have to really individualize the programming for that student so that way they can get the best support that they need to, that way they can be successful. So I think we look at like the data as well, like, okay, how were you tracking this school? How is that looking like? And then as always, we may have to modify it, we may have to continue it, we may have to discontinue it. But I really think it starts there at like an IEP. Sometimes if we have the chance to go out into the locals and like observe the student as well and see how they're doing there and ask questions like, oh, these are the visuals that they need. We also look at like their sub aids and services, right? Like, okay, this is something that they need. The way I kind of view that is like, this is not like a nice to have, this is what they need in this setting. So like if a student comes with behavior intervention plan, it's not like, oh, it's a nice to have, like they might need this plan. Like, no, like this student is exhibiting this. We need to have this plan in place. So not to get very technical with IEPs, but like I think that would be like the first thing we look at if we do have a student that's going to come over.
Sure. And I think you're also you're kind of hinting at, how you're just sort of like you and your team are making those professional judgments to say this individual needs more, right? And I think the way you're talking about it is yes, a local has identified this kid has more needs than what we're able to support at this moment. And so your team can then kind of take that lead and say, okay, let's figure out what we can do. But you're also talking about like, ramping up different supports or changing out different services or figuring out when that's working and you're fading back, right? So how do like I don't know, I'm thinking like how does your team show up with I don't know, like quantifiable like proof, that like you just said this is a need. It's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. So professionally, like how does your team stand on like, yeah, this level of intensity is needed and here's how we're going to do it and how we're going to track it and see if it, works or not. But like how do you back that level of intensity?
Yes, I think as you're asking this, I really do just hear like my other team members just kind of chiming in,
Yeah.
right? Because like I said before, and many times and even in other like sessions we've had before, like it really takes a village, right? And I think how do we look at that intensity level, right? Like, and I think a lot of it just goes like based on the data, right? Of like, okay, how is this looking like? And then just kind of determining from there of like, okay, this is something that they do need to have. Like, for example, I'm thinking if a student's being referred, maybe not so much for like medical reasons, it's more for like their behavior. And perhaps like they're coming in with like, okay, they need to have like a plan, or it's saying that they have an intervention plan. okay, well, then one of the things that I will ask as a behavior consultant, what I will ask, like, okay, send me all the data that you have on this student and their behavior that's right now becoming a barrier in their access to their learning environment. And so I will look at that to see, okay, like, is this behavior intense? Because, and not to like kind of go off the question that you're asking, but because the setting that we're in, like, if you kind of look, if, for those who know the MTSS, we're kind of like essentially that tier 3 building, right? So like it seems like they've exhausted all tier 1, tier 2 support, right? And even those things should always be given at all times. But like now there's a certain number of students that's really requiring that intense support. And that's where like that intervention comes in. And that's kind of like where currently I feel like I'm using most of my experience and time and knowledge in as a BCBA, right? And if I were to get a student that has that, right, part of me was like, okay, when they say intense in a local, but this is a tier 3 building, is this really intense? And you have to like assume, like, yes, this was intense for a local, right? But for us, like, if this is something that's already in on their IEP, we have to take it, right? But sometimes we may just have to like, okay, let's see how the student does with just a change in the environment to see if these behaviors continue to happen. Now, if those behaviors continue to happen and we have our data now that we're also collecting and then the locals also taking, then we can say, okay, now the student probably just needs more an intensive plan, or like we really have to modify this plan now because we're seeing this. And again, it's very different. We also seen students that come in with like a plan, and then sometimes it's like they're not even showing intense behavior. Or if they are exhibiting intense behavior, it's like, what the what? Like, this is nothing really. Like, like this is like manageable. It's pretty redirectable. And I think if we just intensify our classroom management basic skills, right? Like, I think the student might be solid or have just more visuals, like those things, right? Like, I'm kind of laughing and smiling as I'm saying this because we've had those situations happen. But I'm just kind of speaking more like in my wearing the hat as a BCBA, right? Like when you're asking me about intensity and things like that, perhaps like at a behavioral level, those are some ways where I can say, like, okay, this is where they need it, or like it's just a nice to have. And if it's a more nice to have, what other supports are we going to be giving in place? That way we can't say they really need to have this plan. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I think before we wrap up our conversation today, I want to give you an opportunity to also speak to, we've talked about the professional judgment from, our trades, our fields, our skills, like how we're viewing, what those needs may or may not be. But I want to make sure that you have some time to talk about like that student experience. How are they showing up? What shifts are we noticing in them? Especially, I think on your side, where it's like you already are the intensive and you're trying to decide, how do I back that out? And like you were just saying, like maybe they just need an intensive plan. They don't actually need an intensive placement, those types of things. Can you speak a little bit to the student side? Like how are the students showing up in a way that is then kind of giving you and your team that, okay, I think we're ready here?
It depends, right? The student that we have, but I think like, and again, I can't really like speak exactly like what a student is thinking or what they're going through. But for example, I think there's a student that we recently just had about like a year and a half ago that he started with us, and he's been there. It's going to be 2 years soon. And we've noticed that even just with a change in placement, we saw a huge decrease in his maladaptive behaviors and those challenges. And we think that was a positive thing, right? Like, I think maybe just him having the smaller classroom, more, a little bit, one on one support, just having more of that quick, fast attention from a staff member compared to like a local setting that where he was at. And even then, like, perhaps he was like in a resource room, or I forget what kind of classroom he was in, but like that was successful where like he seemed happier. Even parents were reporting like, hey, he's coming back home with less injuries. Like, to me, I would assume that the student is content, right? Like we're not seeing, we're not seeing these behaviors happen as much as what was being reported before, right? And not to say like I firmly believe that was happening, but I think sometimes just with a change in setting that, I mean, as behavior analysts, right? When there's changes in environment, that's going to influence behavior. And so that itself was already showing us that like he was being successful, and that was great. And however, we also have other situations where like it's not always like that. Like behaviors continue to happen, but then you realize like but they need to be here, right? Like this is where they are able to get that support that they need. And for many different, like occupational therapy, if it's that speech therapy, like it's multidisciplinary. So, but I would say like that's a story that comes to mind, like where we do see success with students. And I think, even in our days where it is like tough and, we're seeing behaviors, we're seeing codes, we're seeing crisis, we know that ultimately we're doing the best that we can. And we know that they need to be there because like, I think we have a great team. And of course, the goal is that we always want them to go back. But I think that will be the perfect setting where they can get those intense supports and needs right now, curriculum level, like behaviorally and all those other, supports that we have. But yeah, I think it all just depends on their progress and how they're doing and kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I know you live this all day, every day. So I was excited to let you kind of have this conversation for our listeners. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you, Heather, so much. I appreciate it.
Working with students who need long-term individualized support? Project Base is a 4-strand project designed for educators in self-contained classrooms serving students with low incident needs. You'll get step-by-step guidance on building a program that focuses on communication, daily routines, and real-world skill building. From setting up the classroom environment to designing personalized plans, this course helps you create a space where your students can grow and succeed in school and into adulthood. Led by Chris Zielinski and Carly Dietz, Project Base offers practical strategies, case studies, and planning tools to help you confidently support your students every step of the way. If you're ready to strengthen your program and build something that lasts, this project is your next step. If you're supporting emotional or behavioral needs in general ed or resource classrooms, Project Thrive helps you keep learning on track. And if you're in a therapeutic or alternative setting, building something from the ground up, Project Onward offers the structure and tools to do it well. Head to university.thresholdlearning.org to meet your team and begin building your home base today.
In a school-wide tiered system of support, the most intensive level of intervention, commonly known as Tier 3, is typically handled by special education teachers, while Tier 2 is delivered by highly trained general educators. Tier 3 focuses on highly individualized instruction, guided by a process known as Data-Based Individualization, or DBI. DBI involves starting with a validated supplemental intervention and using both diagnostic and progress monitoring data to create tailored instruction. This approach allows teachers to continually adapt the intervention based on a student's ongoing performance, ensuring the support evolves as needed. Tier 2, on the other hand, is designed to help students who are below grade level but haven't responded well to differentiated core instruction. It uses research-based interventions to address skill gaps in small groups, usually with 4 to 7 students. The primary goal is to reinforce foundational skills that allow students to access grade level content, ultimately preventing further academic struggles. Tier 3 ramps this up significantly, focusing on students with more severe and persistent learning needs who haven't made sufficient progress despite receiving Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions. Teachers in Tier 3 use evidence-based practices proven effective across various content areas, including math, reading, writing, and behavior. The instruction is explicit, integrates cognitive strategies, offers continuous feedback, and is tightly aligned with student performance data. It's delivered to very small groups, usually no more than 3 students, with similar learning or behavioral challenges. A critical part of this intensive instruction is that it is both systematic and explicit. Teachers group students based on shared learning needs, define clear learning goals, and use carefully paced instruction to target specific skill gaps. Data is at the heart of this process, guiding the identification of these gaps and ensuring that instruction is focused on high priority skills that are essential for academic success. Students in these settings benefit from multiple opportunities to respond, practice what they are learning, and receive immediate corrective feedback from teachers and peers. Highly trained specialists, such as reading experts, special educators, or behavioral specialists, typically deliver this level of instruction. They use both quantitative and qualitative adaptations to intensify support, whether it's increasing instructional time or reducing group size, or integrating strategies that help with cognitive processes like self regulation, memory, and academic skills. For instance, when quantitative changes aren't enough, teachers might shift to qualitative adaptations, like making instruction more explicit or incorporating cognitive supports, such as memory aids or self regulation strategies to further aid learning. The DBI frameworks play a pivotal role here. It helps special educators monitor the effectiveness of supplementary interventions. If progress isn't sufficient, the first step is often to increase the instructional intensity by reducing group sizes or extending learning time. If that still doesn't yield the desired outcomes, educators turn to modifying the instructional delivery itself. This might involve using techniques like think alouds or visual aids to model problem solving strategies, or introducing mnemonics to help students retain key concepts. Through this flexible, data driven approach, teachers can make continuous adjustments that meet the unique needs of each student, ensuring that even the most challenging learning barriers can be addressed with targeted, responsive interventions. When students with disabilities aren't making adequate progress through general education instruction, special education teachers or specialists often step in to intensify the support. A widely recognized approach for doing this is through the process of data-based individualization, or DBI, as promoted by the National Center for Intensive Intervention, or NCII. DBI provides a structured, research-based framework that helps educators make well-informed decisions to support both academic and behavioral improvements. It's a data-driven process that revolves around the use of evidence-based curricula in the specific areas where students are struggling, combined with ongoing progress monitoring and diagnostic testing. One of the key aspects of DBI is that it's not static. It encourages constant adjustment based on how well students are responding to interventions. Teachers may make adjustments in curriculum, group size, or even the structure of the instruction itself, all guided by student data. These decisions are often made collaboratively within a team setting, ensuring that multiple perspectives are considered in finding the most effective approach. What makes DBI particularly powerful is how it aligns so closely with several high leverage practices, particularly HLPs 1 through 6, which cover key aspects of collaboration, assessment, and data use, as well as instructional HLPs 11, 12, 16, and 22, which focus on adapting instruction, providing feedback, and offering explicit teaching. This alignment underscores the importance of blending evidence based practices with data informed adjustments to help students with disabilities thrive. When teachers effectively promote active student engagement, particularly for students with significant learning challenges, they rely heavily on the DBI process. DBI provides a research based framework that allows educators to tailor interventions to individual student needs, tracking progress closely and adjusting strategies as necessary. Teachers start by selecting a secondary prevention program grounded in research, one that's specifically designed for students who need more intensive intervention beyond what's offered in the general curriculum. Progress monitoring is essential throughout this process. Teachers continuously track how students are responding to instruction, using data to make informed adjustments. Diagnostic assessment plays a key role as well, helping teachers create highly individualized intervention plans based on a student's unique profile. This isn't a one size fits all approach. It's about adapting and refining strategies until the right fit is found. Within the DBI process, there are clear steps that guide this individualized instruction. First, teachers establish where the student is currently performing academically. From there, they set ambitious yet achievable long term goals based on established norms. High quality instruction or interventions are then implemented with fidelity, and teachers monitor progress toward those goals. As progress is tracked, teachers use specific decision rules to assess how effective the instruction is and how well the student is progressing. At this point, if student progress isn't meeting expectations, teachers generate a hypothesis about what might be hindering progress and adjust the instruction accordingly. The beauty of this process is its flexibility. Teachers can continue to monitor, assess, and make instructional changes throughout the year based on data, ensuring that the support provided is dynamic and responsive to each student's evolving needs. This continuous cycle of evaluation and adaptation ensures that students receive the most effective, personalized support possible. School leaders play a crucial role in ensuring that teachers are equipped to meet the diverse needs of their students, particularly through effective use of evidence based practices and the DBI process. It's essential that educators not only have a solid understanding of these practices, but are also skilled in using data to guide their decisions. This means providing teachers with consistent opportunities for professional development and coaching, particularly around DBI. By doing so, leaders can ensure that teachers are able to implement these processes with precision and confidence, adapting instruction based on students' data in real time. In addition to offering training, feedback is key. School leaders need to be actively engaged in observing how teachers are applying DBI across different settings, offering constructive input on whether educators are making the most accurate and efficient decisions. This helps to ensure that intensive interventions are having the intended impact. Moreover, accountability is a significant part of this process. It's not just about providing resources and training, but also holding teachers and other key stakeholders responsible for their roles within DBI. This includes ensuring that intensive instruction is delivered effectively, that data is being collected and monitored regularly, and that progress towards adjusting goals is being met. Leaders should also be ready to offer support or coaching whenever necessary, keeping the entire process moving smoothly and ensuring that students receive the best possible outcomes. While many students respond well to research-based interventions like those provided in Tier 2 instruction, there are some who don't make the expected progress, even with these targeted supports. These students require a more intensive instructional approach. This is where the framework of data-based individualization, or DBI, becomes critical. Grounded in over a decade of research, DBI has proven especially effective for students with disabilities who don't show adequate progress in general education, Tier 1, or with supplemental interventions, Tier 2. Intensive instruction under DBI isn't just about increasing the frequency or duration of lessons. It's about making strategic, data-driven adjustments to the intervention itself. The beauty of DBI is its flexibility. It responds to individual student data, ensuring that instruction adapts in real time to meet their specific needs. By focusing on these nuanced, individualized aspects, students who would otherwise continue to struggle can make meaningful gains in their learning. The process is about being deeply responsive, adjusting to the unique and evolving challenges students face in their educational journey. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Join us next week as Heather sits down with transition specialist Lindsay Palak-Shelton from our community partner, Future Social Learning and Transition Planning, to talk about our next high-leverage practice.
Hey, before you jump back into your busy life, consider dropping a like and follow @ThresholdLearningTLC on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you like our show, share the podcast with your colleagues. A personal recommendation is by far the best way to promote the podcast. Let them know that they can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that they catch their podcast. Just be sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. You can email us at info@thresholdlearning.org. We always enjoy connecting with fellow educators and champions for educational justice. You can find everything you're looking for at thresholdlearning.org. See you there. Attention educators pursuing behavior analysis certification and universities preparing them for success. Supervision with TLC offers 100% remote fieldwork supervision designed specifically for school-based professionals. Educators can earn their hours right in their schools without leaving their classroom, all while being supported by experienced BCBAs who understand the realities of education. With month-to-month scheduling, affordable rates, and both live video and asynchronous chat, our fieldwork supervision model is designed to fit into your life, not the other way around. We also invite universities to enhance their graduate programs in partnership with our team of practicing school-based BCBAs. Our fieldwork supervision model keeps students on track for certification by helping them connect their practice to all exam domains so that they can confidently pass the exam. Explore more at university.thresholdlearning.org/supervision or email supervision@thresholdlearning.org to connect. Supervision with TLC, where educators grow into behavior analysts.